What's shaking, folks? Back with another reaction, back with another ambient reaction. I'd like to start by giving a big shout out to all the people who've commented on and followed the Sybian down-tempo ambient reaction playlist. A number of music lovers and connoisseurs with great taste, so I really do appreciate you all. In the moment, Philip and Kim stand out to me in particular, so big ups to both of you. And indeed, I've been talking to Kim when I originally reacted to a few Jon Mark tunes, and she took an interest in that and mentioned there's a couple that she then went and heard online that she'd be interested in talking about more. I did want to start this video by saying there was a comment that you made recently, but it wasn't on a Jon Mark video, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't remember where it was. And I do get a lot of comments these days, so I wasn't able to track it down. I want to say maybe it was also from the Standing Stones of Callanish album. I'm not sure. If I got that wrong, do let me know. Now again, I've been sleeping on Jon Mark. I got really excited, and I have, as you can see here, 5 more albums beyond the one that I've already reacted to. I did mention I want to go through a Celtic story. There's a cool booklet in here where it gives a narrative on what the album meant to him and the historical narratives that he was thinking of when he composed it. So I'm going to come back and we will do, I think as Kim said at the time, story time. But for the time being, I kind of wanted just to jump to a random track, and you know, again, we'll come back for more Standing Stones of Callanish, but I have so much Jon Mark, and it's such an amazing body of work. R.I.P. to Jon. I think he died, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. It was in the 2010s, I believe. And indeed, he was originally from the UK, but he spent most of his career, as with a number of other kind of more 20th century classic ambient artists, in New Zealand. Apparently it was a hotbed of ambient music making. Nevertheless, we're going to listen to an album he did called A Sunday in Autumn. This was released on White Cloud, a New Zealand label, along with a number of his other releases. I don't think all of them, but I think most of them. Let me see, that's right. There's one that's on a German label, and that's Standing Stones of Callanish, but most of them, oh, and so is Alhambra, which again, it's like Spanish themed. But the other 3 all seem to be, or other 4 all seem to be on White Cloud, which is a New Zealand label. No, that's right, Land of Merlin is on the German one too. So it seems like it was either on a German label, which is it Cluck? What is it called again? I can't quite read it. Or Kukuk? Kukuk? I think it's called Kukuk, I'm not sure. So he seems to have done most of his work on those 2 labels. In any case, we are going to listen to a tune on A Sunday in Autumn, and we're going to listen to Afternoon, the old walking track. Now, as you might expect, this album has a bit more of an urban feel, a bit more of a modern feel, sort of like really ambient, rich and lush progressive jazz almost, but it is definitely still that same ambient magic that we've heard on the handful of tunes that we've reacted to from Standing Stones of Callanish. So bottom line, I'm excited to go through this as well as the other albums. The only one I would say, Asia Journey, which is an album he did, what year is this? 1996, although it's also copyrighted 1995. Yeah, the track listing, it lists the tracks on the back with time listings. Well, when I ripped it to my computer, it's the same number of tracks, but the time listings are completely different than that are shown here. So I don't know quite what's going on with my copy of Asia Journey, which it says Asia Journey on the disc. So this one we might wait to get to just till I figure out whether, you know, my computer just actually didn't read the disc right, or whether they cut it up differently than it was originally conceived in terms of the time listings on the vinyl. I'm not sure. Nevertheless, I'll get to the bottom of that, and in the meantime we'll start going through some of these others, starting, as I said, with Afternoon, the old walking track from A Sunday in Autumn, which is an album from, where is it shown here? Of course, this one it actually doesn't say it. Hilarious. Does it say it on the disc itself? It does. 1994. I do have to point out this quite amusing picture of Jon looking very photogenic on the inside. So here we go. Jon Mark, Afternoon, the old walking track from A Sunday in Autumn, 1994. harder when it did than I expected. Right as the tune ends, Luca, the magician, emerges from behind a place where I didn't even know she was. What are you doing? Come here. Come here. You can be on camera. Oof. Oh, but I was going to put her on the chair, but her chair is currently occupied. Nevertheless, I absolutely love this man's music. I wish I could have met Jon Mark. I think he would have been a really fascinating person to talk to and to, sort of watch work on his synthesizer keyboards when composing these tunes. But yeah, ultimately, I use the word urban in advance. Maybe, idea a walking track. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a big city, and perhaps it even seems more applicable in a suburban or perhaps even more rural environment. The idea of, outside of a home, there'd be this long sort of, rustic walking track that would take you by some nice countryside. But either way, it still does have more of a 20th century, closer to modern music feel. As I said, it feels kind of like down-tempo jazz. That's my memory of hearing some of these tunes, which is to say, I recently got this album, but I do know some of the tracks on this and Land of Merlin, because I remember when I first discovered his work, when I got Standing Stones of Callanish on vinyl, which I'm still perplexed. I never sold that vinyl. It is not in my collection anymore. I don't know how that happened. You have a big enough vinyl collection, things like that do occasionally take place, but it doesn't make sense. Like empirically, there's no way it shouldn't be there. But I've gone through my entire collection in the last few years enough times where it should have popped up and it just hasn't. So, but yeah, ultimately it definitely has a more like 20th century sound. But it was even better than I remembered it, and it was ultimately it still had that same keyboard, lush heaven sort of feel, which a lot of his music that I am familiar with, I remember having. So basically, I enjoy what I do know from him, and it's even sounding better in the moment as I come back to it now after several years, after I first discovered his work. And I'm looking forward to going through not only these albums and hearing some tunes that I'm probably not going to remember, even on Standing Stones of Callanish, which I know better than any of the others, but we'll eventually start going through a couple of the albums that I've since gotten, which I've never heard at all before. So very much looking forward to that. There's one other album I'm still working on getting. It's something like 7 p.m. in New York. By far, it is the rarest on Discogs and the most expensive even for used copies. So still working on acquiring that one. But yeah, lots to go through before we have to worry about running out of Jon Mark. So very much looking forward to it, as is Luca. I will say there was a moment when I was listening to that, and I think it was when I commented that that sort of quasi like synthesizer like saxophone type sound, that it came back a little later than I thought, but was even more impactful when it did come back. It was like an out of body moment. Like as I was saying that, and for a moment or two afterward, it felt like someone else had said that. Like I was sort of still there listening to the piece, and like someone else like below me was sort of giving that comment. So that was a really weird experience, which when I listen to Ambient, it often takes me to places that even great music of a lot of other genres I love a great deal are not capable of doing. This is more like traditional ambient, I would say, but still, it obviously can take my brain to really incredible places. So, a testament to the genre overall and to Jon Mark. Once again, shout out to all the people who've taken an interest in the Sybian and ambient and down-tempo reactions. And at this point, Luca, I do apologize, but I am going to have to pick you up. Nevertheless, let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.